The unveiling of the Thunderchild. The Thunderchild emerged from the Arcturus shipyards like a predator from its den. Unlike the sleek, curved vessels of the Elloran Ascendancy or the crystalline structures of the Vec Dominion, the human warship was all hard angles and imposing silhouettes. Its matte black hull absorbed rather than reflected the light of distant stars, giving it the appearance of a moving void against the backdrop of space. Captain Maya Reeves stood on the bridge, her hands clasped behind her back as she stared out at the vastness before her. At 42, Reeves had the bearing of someone who had fought her way through life. Her dark skin bore faint scars from the orbital bombardment of New Sydney, and her eyes carried the weight of seeing too many human colonies fall to alien aggression. "Systems check complete, Captain," reported Commander Harrison from the operations console. "All parameters nominal." Reeves nodded. Time to take her out for a proper test drive. For 300 years, humanity had been the newcomers to the galactic stage. The 12 established species of the galactic Concordat had initially welcomed them, curious about these strange bipeds from a water-rich world. But when humans began expanding rapidly, claiming star systems, and establishing colonies faster than any species before them, curiosity turned to concern, and concern to hostility. The last 50 years had seen a systematic attempt to contain human expansion. Trade embargoes, territorial restrictions, even direct military action against outlying colonies, all was conducted with plausible deniability. Humanity had been pushed back, confined to a sphere of space that grew increasingly crowded as Earth's population continued to soar. Until now. "Set course for the Callous Expanse," Reeves ordered. "Standard approach, nothing fancy. Let's not spook anyone just yet." The Callous Expanse was technically neutral territory, though the Vec Dominion had long claimed it as their ancestral hunting grounds. 3 Vec battle cruisers patrolled the region, their crystalline hulls glittering like deadly jewels as they maintained their formation. Commander Harrison's console chimed. "Captain, we're being hailed by the Vec command vessel. They're ordering us to alter course and leave the Expanse immediately." Reeves smiled thinly. "Politely decline. Inform them we're conducting a routine systems check and will be passing through without stopping. They're powering weapons, Captain. As expected, maintain course and speed." The Vec didn't waste time with further warnings. 3 lances of coherent energy streaked across space, impacting the Thunderchild's hull simultaneously. Under normal circumstances, those blasts would have crippled a vessel 3 times the size. The Thunderchild didn't even shudder. "Hull integrity at 100%, reported the tactical officer, Lieutenant Chen, unable to keep the satisfaction from her voice. "No penetration. The ablative matrix is functioning perfectly." On the Vec command ship, Admiral Kishar stared at his sensor readings in disbelief. The human vessel should be venting atmosphere, its crew dying in the cold vacuum of space. Instead, it continued on its course as if nothing had happened. "Impossible." He chittered, mandibles clicking in agitation. "Fire again. Full power to forward batteries." The second volley was stronger than the first, the energy beams visibly brighter as they crossed the void. Once again, they struck the Thunderchild's hull. Once again, they had no effect. Captain Reeves watched the Vec ships on the main display, her expression impassive. "I believe it's time to return the favor. Lieutenant Chen, a demonstration, please. Minimum yield, targeting their propulsion systems only." "Aye, Captain." Quantum cascade initiating. What happened next would be debated in emergency sessions throughout the galaxy for weeks to come. The Thunderchild didn't fire energy weapons or launch missiles. Instead, a ripple seemed to emanate from its hull, a barely visible distortion that expanded outward like a wave. When it reached the Vec vessels, their crystalline structures simply came apart. Not in an explosion or violent disintegration, but rather as if the fundamental forces holding them together had politely excused themselves and stepped aside. The 3 massive battle cruisers dissolved into clouds of component particles, leaving their crews unharmed, but floating in emergency survival bubbles amid the debris of their mighty warships. Quantum cascade successful, Chen reported, her voice hushed despite herself. Enemy vessels neutralized. Commander Harrison stared at the screen. My God, Maya, what have we built? Reeves didn't answer immediately. The Thunderchild wasn't just a warship. It was humanity's declaration that the era of their submission was over. 3 centuries of being pushed around, of watching their colonies burn while the Concordat looked the other way. All of that ended today. Something that should have never been necessary, she finally said. Send a retrieval shuttle for the Vec crews. I want them treated with full military courtesy. Within hours, the incident had spread across galactic communication channels. The Vec, historically one of the most militarily feared species in known space, had been defeated. No, not defeated, dismissed, by a single human vessel using technology that none of the Concordat powers could identify. Emergency sessions were called. Diplomatic channels burned with accusations and demands for explanation. Concordat military vessels altered patrol routes to give human space a wider berth than ever before. On the capital world of the Ellerin Ascendancy, the Galactic Concordat Assembly convened in an unprecedented emergency session. Representatives of all 12 founding species gathered in the vast crystal chamber, their voices raised in concern and outrage. High Chancellor Tessic of the Elorans called for order, his translucent appendages glowing with the bioluminescence that indicated extreme distress among his kind. We have all seen the recordings, he said once the chamber quieted. The humans have developed a weapon that violates the fundamental principles of civilized warfare. A weapon that could, theoretically, be used against planetary bodies or even stars. Ambassador Krull of the Vec Dominion rose from his crystalline seat, his faceted eyes glittering with rage. 3 of our finest vessels reduced to component atoms. 300 years of restraint toward these primitives, and this is how they repay our patience. The chamber erupted again until Chancellor Tessic's appendages flashed a stunning pattern of command. We must act decisively, he declared. I propose the formation of a coalition of concerned species. Our first action will be to deliver an ultimatum to Earth's global Senate. Surrender this vessel and all research related to this technology, or face the combined might of the Concordat. The motion passed unanimously. None of the assembled powers considered what this ultimatum might mean to a species that had spent 3 centuries being systematically constrained and attacked. None of them asked why humans might have felt the need to develop such a weapon in the first place. None of them understood that the ultimatum would be seen not as a demand, but as confirmation that humanity had finally found a way to be taken seriously. On Earth, the Global Senate received the Concordat's message with grim satisfaction. President Elena Cortez, a veteran of the Defense Force before entering politics, stood before the assembled senators, her expression resolute. For 300 years, she said, we have attempted to join the galactic community as equals. For 300 years, we have been treated as second-class citizens of the cosmos, our colonies restricted, our trade hampered, our people killed when we dared expand beyond the boundaries they set for us. She paused, looking around the chamber. They didn't fear us before. They do now. And I say it's about time. The Senate's response to the ultimatum was brief and unanimous. The Thunderchild would not be surrendered. Its technology would not be abandoned, and any action taken against Earth or its colonies would be met with appropriate force. As the diplomatic channels exploded with outrage, Captain Maya Reeves received new orders from Fleet Command. The Thunderchild would no longer be conducting tests. It would be heading to the disputed colonies in the Orion Spur, territories that humanity had been forced to abandon decades earlier under Concordat pressure. It was time to reclaim what was rightfully theirs. Part 2. Defiance and Consequence. The Council of the 13 Species, the 12 founding members of the Concordat, plus the Thraxi, who had been admitted 50 years earlier, gathered in emergency session for the 3rd time in as many days. The atmosphere was tense, a mixture of fear and righteous indignation permeating the chamber. The humans have rejected our ultimatum, High Chancellor Tessic announced, his bioluminescence pulsing with agitation. Furthermore, their warship has been detected heading toward the Orion Spur colonies. Ambassador Cheval of the Noor Collective rose, her feathered crest flattened against her skull in distress. The Orion colonies were legally ceded to Concordat authority after the humans violated expansion treaties. This is a direct challenge to our sovereignty. More than that, rumbled General Zork of the Thraxi Military Command. It is a test. They wish to see if we will back our words with action. The chamber fell silent as the implications settled over the assembly. The humans were forcing their hand. "We have no choice," Chancellor Tessic said finally. "We must deploy the combined defense fleet to intercept this vessel before it reaches the Orion colonies. The humans must learn that technological superiority does not place them above galactic law." The motion passed unanimously, though more than a few representatives felt a cold dread settling in their hearts. The combined defense fleet represented the most powerful concentration of military might the galaxy had ever seen. Over 200 warships drawn from all member species. If this human vessel could truly stand against such a force, the thought remained unspoken, too terrible to give voice to. Aboard the Thunderchild, Captain Reeves studied the tactical display with Commander Harrison. The combined defense fleet had taken up position at the entrance to the Orion Spur, a vast armada spread across the shipping lanes in an unmistakable blockade. "They're serious," Harrison observed. "That's more firepower than I've seen in my entire career." Reeves nodded. "They're afraid, John. For the first time in their history, they don't have an overwhelming technological advantage." "We could still turn back," Harrison suggested, though his tone indicated he already knew the answer. "Diplomatic channels aren't completely closed." "Diplomacy only works when both sides respect each other," Reeves replied, straightening her uniform. "We've spent 3 centuries trying to earn their respect through cooperation and restraint. It didn't work. Now, we'll try something else." She turned to Lieutenant Chen at the tactical station. "Open a channel to the Concordat flagship." The main screen flickered to life, revealing the translucent form of High Admiral Tessic. His appendages were glowing a steady, controlled pattern that Reeves recognized as formal military protocol. "Captain Reeves," Tessic's artificial voice translated through the comm system. "You are ordered to power down your vessel and prepare for boarding. Your technology has been deemed in violation of the Galactic Concordat Treaty on Weapons of Mass Destruction." Reeves raised an eyebrow. "That's interesting, Admiral, considering Earth is not a signatory to that treaty. We were never invited to participate in its drafting. Nevertheless, you will comply or face the consequences." "I'm afraid I can't do that, Admiral. We're on a peaceful mission to re-establish contact with human colonies that were illegally forced to submit to Concordat rule. If you fire upon us, we will consider it an act of war." Admiral Tessic's appendages flashed with patterns too quick for the translation software to interpret. "Anger, perhaps, or frustration. You are outnumbered 200 to 1, Captain. Whatever technology you possess cannot overcome such odds." Reeves smiled slightly. "With respect, Admiral, I suggest you review the Callous Expanse incident more carefully. We disabled 3 VEC battle cruisers without causing a single casualty. We have no desire for bloodshed, but we will not be stopped." The communication ended abruptly from the Concordat side. "They're deploying into attack formation," Harrison reported. "Energy signatures indicate weapons charging across the fleet." Reeves took her command chair, her expression resolute. "All hands to battle stations. Defensive systems at maximum. Prepare the quantum cascade, but hold fire until my command." The first volley from the Concordat fleet lit up space like a newborn star, hundreds of energy weapons firing simultaneously at the lone human vessel. The combined firepower could have reduced a small moon to rubble. Against the Thunderchild, it was as effective as throwing pebbles at a mountain. "Hull integrity at 98%, Chen reported, a note of surprise in her voice. "Minor fluctuation in the ablative matrix, but it's already stabilizing." Reeves nodded. "As expected. Now, let's show them what we're really capable of." Target their propulsion systems only. Quantum cascade at minimum yield. The wave that emanated from the Thunderchild was stronger this time, visible as a rippling distortion that spread outward like a tsunami. As it passed through the Concordat fleet, ship after ship simply went dark, their engines and weapons systems dissolving into component particles while their hulls remained intact. In the span of 30 seconds, 200 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy found themselves drifting helplessly, their crews unharmed but utterly powerless. The Thunderchild moved through the disabled fleet like a shark through schools of minnows, continuing on its course toward the Orion colonies without further incident. On worlds across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. The humans, long considered a minor power at best, had effortlessly neutralized the combined might of the Concordat. The balance of power hadn't just shifted, it had been completely upended. 3 days later, an emergency session of the full Galactic Assembly was convened. Every spacefaring species, member of the Concordat or not, was in attendance. The mood was somber, even funereal. High Chancellor Tessic addressed the assembly, his appendages dim and barely glowing. We face an unprecedented situation. The humans have developed technology that renders conventional military force obsolete. Our scientists still cannot explain how their quantum cascade weapon functions, only that it appears to selectively disrupt the fundamental forces binding matter together. He paused, his translation unit emitting a sound like a sigh. The combined defense fleet remains disabled. The human vessel has reached the Orion colonies and has begun the process of re-establishing human governance there. We have no effective military response available. Ambassador Krull of the Vec rose, his crystalline form catching the light. Then we must turn to law. I propose that we declare this human technology illegal under the Galactic Code. Any species developing or deploying such weapons would face total economic isolation. A murmur ran through the assembly. Economic isolation was the most severe non-military sanction available, effectively cutting a species off from all interstellar trade and cooperation. Before a vote could be called, a new figure entered the chamber. Ambassador Diana Chen of Earth, the mother of Lieutenant Chen serving aboard the Thunderchild. She walked calmly to the central podium, her expression serene despite the hostile glares directed her way. Distinguished representatives, she began, before you vote to declare human technology illegal, I invite you to consider a simple question. Why did we develop it in the first place? The chamber fell silent. For 3 centuries, humanity has suffered under Concordat restrictions. Our colonies have been attacked, our expansion limited, our technology hampered. When we protested, we were ignored. When we defended ourselves, we were sanctioned. Ambassador Chen's voice remained measured, but there was steel beneath her words. The quantum cascade technology was not developed for conquest. It was developed because you left us no choice but to find a way to be heard. She activated a holographic display in the center of the chamber. It showed images of human colonies burning, of refugees fleeing Concordat peacekeeping operations, of trade sanctions and territorial restrictions. We don't want war, she continued as the images played. We never did. But we will no longer accept second-class status in this galaxy. The Thunderchild isn't a threat. It's an invitation to reconsider how we relate to each other. High Chancellor Tessic's appendages flickered with complex patterns. What exactly are you proposing, Ambassador? A new treaty, Chen replied. One that includes Earth as a full and equal partner. One that acknowledges the sovereign rights of all species to colonize unclaimed worlds. One that establishes neutral arbitration for territorial disputes. She looked around the chamber. In return, we will share certain aspects of our technology, not the quantum cascade itself, but advances in energy efficiency, medical science, and faster-than-light travel that we've developed alongside it. A ripple of surprise ran through the assembly. The humans were offering to share technology rather than using their advantage to dominate. And if we refuse, demanded Ambassador Krull. Chen's expression remained calm. Then nothing changes. The Thunderchild remains in service, More ships of its class are already under construction, and you all spend the next century wondering when and where they might appear. The debate that followed lasted for days. Accusations were hurled, threats made, sanctions proposed and withdrawn. But underlying it all was the undeniable reality. The humans could not be coerced any longer. Either a new relationship would be established, or the Concordat would face a future where their military superiority, the foundation of their diplomatic power, was meaningless. In the end, pragmatism prevailed. The Galactic Charter of Sovereign Rights was drafted, acknowledging the independence of all spacefaring species and establishing a new council where all would have equal voice, regardless of how long they had been among the stars. The quantum cascade technology was not declared illegal. Such a declaration would have been unenforceable, but the humans agreed to certain limitations on its use and development, overseen by a multinational scientific committee. Aboard the Thunderchild, now in orbit around the human colony world of New Horizon in the Orion Spur, Captain Maya Reeves received the news with mixed emotions. The diplomatic solution was undoubtedly better than continued conflict, but part of her wondered if the Concordat species had truly learned their lesson, or were simply biding their time. "So we're not outlaws after all," Commander Harrison remarked as they watched the formal signing ceremony on the main view screen. "No," Reeves agreed, "but we've changed the galaxy forever. For better or worse, humanity has proven that technological innovation can overcome even the most entrenched power structures." She turned away from the screen, gazing out at the stars. "The real question is what we do with that power now that we have it." Harrison followed her gaze. "Lead by example." Reeves nodded slowly. "That's the plan. But the Thunderchild remains on active duty, just in case." As diplomatic relations normalized in the months that followed, the legend of the human warship grew rather than diminished. The vessel that had faced down 200 of the galaxy's most powerful warships without firing a destructive shot became a symbol, to some, of humanity's arrogance, to others, of the indomitable human spirit, and to many across the galaxy who had lived under Concordat restrictions, a sign that the old order could be challenged. The galaxy had tried to ban the Thunderchild, to declare its very existence illegal. Instead, they had been forced to make room at the table for its creators. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, and they were here to stay.